So next, we will also be dealing with the KenKen puzzle that we prepared. This activity will challenge both your logic and math skills while keeping things fun and exciting. It's a great way to train your brain and improve your problem-solving skills as we work together to complete the puzzle. A KenKen puzzle, also known as Tom-Toms or Calcudokus, is a logic and math-based game similar to Sudoku. You fill the grid with numbers without repeating any in a row or column. Each outline group of boxes, called a cage, has a target number and the math operation such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division that you must use to reach the correct answer.
First thing we should do is to look for freebies or single cells that is already given that serves to be a hint to help us along the way. So as we can see here, we have the numbers 1 and 4. Next, we look for a single possible solution. What I mean by this is to seek for two cell box function. Like what we have here, we have 3 plus, which can only be a 1 and 2. So if we add 1 and 2, it will only be 3. It's fixed and it can't be anything else. But we don't know which cell will contain the number 1 or the number 2. So we will simply just be going to input or note take it. The importance of this is it will help us along its row, knowing that a 1 or 2 cannot be in these cells because it will be repeated in the row. Here we also have a 13 plus that has to be a fixed 7 and 6 because these are the only numbers that adds up to 13, considering that the numbers should be from 1 up to 7 only since we are doing a 7 by 7 KenKen puzzle. Another one here, subtraction function, which is a fixed 1 and 7 because 7 minus 1 is equal to 6. Here we also have 14 in multiplication, so we should think of two numbers that has a product of 14, and these two numbers are 2 and 7 only. There is no more possible outcome there. So again, by visualizing, we're not really sure which cell is gonna be a 2 or 7, so we just simply note them there and come back to them later after we figure out the other cells. Now let's start with 24x. So we listed here 3 possible factors that when multiplied, we will have 24. So we have here 1, 4, and 6. So 1 times 4 times 6 is equal to 24. 2 times 2 times 6 is equal to 24. 2 times 3 times 4 is equal to 26. But take note, 6 is already in the same row, so we must remove the factors that contain 6, making 2 times 3 times 4 the possible factor. Now that we input it in the table, we must cross out the number 2 since it lies in the same column with the factors of 14x, which is 2 and 7. So now let's go in the 3 in division. So the only two numbers that has a quotient of 3 will be 1 and 3. So 3 divided by 1 is equal to 3. Next up, we have here 12 plus. So the only two numbers that adds up to 12 is 5 and 7. Now we listed here the factors of 2 minus and 2 in division. Now as you can see here, I crossed out these numbers because these numbers are repeated in the same row. For example, here in 2 minus, 2 and 4 is crossed out because it lies in the same row. The same way goes in the 2 in division. I crossed out a 1 and 2 because it will be repeated in the same row. Now having these numbers left, we're gonna place them in their respective cells. Here in 2 division, we're going to place the number 3 in the second cell, since if we put it in the first cell, it will going to be repeated in the column. Here in 2 minus, we place the number 7 in the first cell because if we put it in the second cell, it will going to be repeated again in the column. And then here in the 6 minus, we crossed out number 7 because it lies on the same column, and then it will be automatically number 1 since there are only 2 choices. With that being said, we fixed 7 in the first cell and 1 in the second cell. Now we have here listed the factors of 5 minus, which is 1, 6, and 2, 7. But we crossed out the factor 7 because 7 is already existing in the same column. And now we're left with the 1 and 6 factor. By visualizing the puzzle, we must not put the number 1 in the first cell since it already exists in the same row, so we must put it in the second cell. Now having that fixed, we cross out number 1 in the same column, leaving 2 as the last option, and we must fix it within this cell. And automatically, the first cell will be 1. And now we have here the factors of 11 plus, but we must cross the first one, which is 4 and 7, because 7 lies in the same column. Now having 5 and 6 as the last option, we must place the number 6 in the second cell, because the first cell already contained number 6 in the column. We have here 3, 5, and 6, which when we multiply together, it will be 90. And now we place it on the respective cells with no repetitions in the rows and column. We place 6 in the third cell because if we put it in the first cell, it will be repeated in the row. And if in the second cell, it will be repeated in the column. So the third cell is the best option. Now we cross out number 3, leaving 2, because here are the list of the 1 minus. We crossed out these numbers because they are repeated in the column, leaving 3 and 4 as the last option. We placed 3 in the first cell because if we place it in the second cell, it will be repeated in the column. Now by placing the 3 in the first cell, we cross out the number 3 in the 24x, leaving 4 as the last option. And now if that's 4, 3 will be the last number in the last cell. And now we have here the numbers that has a quotient of number 2. We crossed out the first and last option because they lie in the same column. They are being repeated. We placed 4 in the first cell since 4 is the only number that is not present in the same column. And now we have here 7 and 5, which are the only 2 numbers from 1 to 7 that has the sum of 12. We didn't put 5 in the first cell, instead 7, because if we put 5 in the first cell, it will be repeated in the row. Now as we input 7, we automatically cross out 7 in the same row, leaving 2 behind. So it will be automatically 2 in the first cell and 7 in the second cell. Now same sum, which is 12, but 3 cells we here have 2, 4, and 6. Again, we crossed out the others because they lie in the same row or the same column. And now we place it in the respective cells where it is not repeated in the column or in the row. Same goes with here. We have here 1 and 4, and we place it in the cell where it's not repeated in the column and the row. Here we have the remaining factors, 5 minus, which is 1 and 6. We placed 1 in the first cell because it will be repeated in the row and if we place it in the second cell. Having 6 there, we cross out 6 in the 13 plus column, leaving 7 as the last option. And now we make the second cell number 6. And here again, we place the factors of 6 times, which is 2 and 3, and in their place or in their cells where it's not repeated in the column or in the row. Almost there, but first we need to cross out the factors that are being repeated by row and by column, leaving 2 and 5 as the numbers that has the difference 3. We place 2 in the first cell since it will be repeated in the second cell row. And then automatically 5 will be in the second cell. And now on the last step, we just find the numbers that are missing in the columns and the row. In order to double check, we must add 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 7, which will be equal to 19, which is correct.
That's it! Puzzle solved! Remember, KenKen isn't just about numbers. It's about patience and logic. So keep practicing, stay calm, and have fun solving. See you in the next puzzle!